Hungarian Folk Tales. Sebastian, the Dragon Slayer. Once upon a time, there was a poor man. And the poor man had 3 sons. They were so poor that they could not afford to buy even the smallest morsel of food. So they decided to go and see the king and tell him of their misfortune. As they were ambling and rambling along their way, they saw an old shepherd grazing sheep on the hill. The eldest son said, "Ah, if these sheep were mine, I would give one to every poor man." The old shepherd replied, "Then from this moment on, you shall be the shepherd here, and the sheep shall be yours." The 2 other youths continued on their journey, and the old man went with them too. They reached a field of hawthorn. The second son said, "If only there were vines in this field and not hawthorn, and if only the vines were mine, I would give a vine of plump grapes to every poor man." "Then let the field be yours," said the old shepherd. "And instead of a field of hawthorn, let it be a vineyard." And the second son stayed to tend the vines. The third son continued on his journey with the old shepherd by his side, and soon they arrived at the banks of a broad river. The young man said, "If only I were the ferryman here, I would take everyone to the far banks and ask not even for a penny." So the old shepherd agreed and continued on his way home alone. He ambled and rambled along, and soon his path took him winding back to where the first youth stood. "You have so many fine sheep, my son," said the old man. "Would you give me one?" "If I gave one of my sheep to everyone who happened by, in the end I would not have a single sheep to my name." The old man gave a wave of his hand, and suddenly the hill turned to stone. Then he continued on his way to meet the second son. "What a lovely vineyard you have, dear boy. You could give me a vine or 2. "I will not give you a vine, not even a cluster of withered grapes." And before he could so much as cast a glance at his vines, the entire vineyard turned into a field of prickly hawthorn. The moon was high in the sky by the time the old shepherd reached the river, where he found the youngest son. He called out to the other side of the river, Come across the waters on the ferry." The wife of the ferryman was heavy with child, so the old man had to wait a while, but the youngest brother soon crossed the waters on the ferry. He did not ask as much as a single penny from the old man. Meanwhile, the baby was born, and they asked the old shepherd to be the godfather. By the time the baby had grown to be a boy of 7 years old, he already seemed to be a lad of 20. The old man said to him, "Now, Sebastian," for this was his name, "I will give you a sword. If you tell this sword, 'Sword, sword, sharp and true, mighty sword, slice his head in 2, and it will slice the head from the neck of any foe.'" The boy thanked the old man. "And now," said the old man, "go to see the king of the nearby lands, for they need as many shepherds there as there are days in the year. But do not ask a high wage, no more than 12 gold coins, a saddle and a horse. Play on the pipes and drive the flock into the rosemary forest, and fear nothing." So he went to see the king of the nearby lands. "Your Majesty, do you have need of a shepherd in your kingdom?" "Indeed I do," said the king, and he took the boy into his service. "Take the flocks out to graze and play the pipes as you watch over them, but do not go over the bridge, for if you do, you will surely meet your death." Sebastian took the flocks out to graze, playing on the pipes. The king watched him from the window. The boy was deep in a rosemary forest. He took off his cloak and spread it out at his feet. Then he took out his pipes and played on them. There was a stream nearby, and as the water rushed and gushed, suddenly a 7-headed dragon emerged from the water. "And pray tell, what stray winds have brought you here? Do you seek the unhappy fate of the other shepherds who came here before you?" Sebastian took his sword in hand and asked the dragon calmly, "Why, what fate befell them?" "Why, if you are so bold to ask, "I will show you," roared the dragon, and he charged at the boy. Sebastian lifted the sword above his head and cried out, "Sword, sword, sharp and true, mighty sword slice his head in two," and each of the 7 heads of the dragon fell with a thud to the ground. The next day, when Sebastian was eating his breakfast, a 9-headed dragon emerged from the waters of the stream, but it fared no better than the 7-headed dragon before it. The king could not fathom what had happened, for until this Sebastian had come along, he had lost a shepherd every day of the year. "I will pay it little mind," thought the king. "We will wait and see what the fates have in store." Again Sebastian took the flocks out to graze, and he stopped to have a drink from the stream when suddenly a 12-headed dragon emerged from the waters. "How dare you come to this place?" Sebastian drew his sword. "Sword, sword, sharp and true, mighty sword slice his head in two." When the dragon had but a single head remaining on its shoulders, he begged for mercy. "Oh, Sebastian, Sebastian the dragon slayer, please leave me with this one head, and I swear I will serve you." So Sebastian let the dragon keep the last of its 12 heads. Under the bridge there was an enormous cave, and the dragon took Sebastian to its mouth. Sebastian had never seen anything like it before. It was an empire bigger than the realm of the king. There Sebastian found the sheep and the shepherds that had been stolen by the dragons. "Come with me to see the king," said Sebastian, and with that he sliced the dragon's last head off. When he returned to the castle, the king soon realized he was a man of great courage and strength. He gave Sebastian his daughter's hand in marriage, and with it, half of his realm. "I accept your daughter's hand in marriage," said Sebastian, "but your lands you may keep, for I am a lord of a kingdom even finer than yours." They celebrated their wedding that very day, and they all lived happily ever after. Hungarian Folk Tales. King Matthias and the Lamb with the Golden Fleece. The King of Prussia went to see King Matthias. They greeted each other as old friends, and the King of Prussia said, "I heard that you have a lamb with a golden fleece." "It is true. Among the many sheep in my flocks, I have a lamb with a golden fleece, and I have a shepherd who never tells a lie." To this the King of Prussia replied, "I will prove to you that you are wrong, for your shepherd does not always speak the truth." "This I will not believe," said King Matthias, "for my shepherd never lies." "I will prove to you that he does, for I will trick him, so that he must." To this King Matthias replied, "I am so certain of his honesty that I will give you half my kingdom if he lies." The King of Prussia replied, "And I will give you half of mine if he does not." So they shook hands and bid each other good night, and the King of Prussia returned to his inn. There he changed his clothes into peasant's rags and went to work in the fields. Meekly he greeted the shepherd, and the shepherd replied, "Welcome, the Lord's blessing be on you, my king." "How do you know I am a king?" The shepherd replied, "I know from your words you are a king." To this the King of Prussia replied, "I will shower you in golden coins. I will give you 6 horses and the finest carriage if you give me the lamb with the golden fleece." "Oh, I could not do that, not for all the gold in the world, for King Matthias would have me hanged." The King of Prussia promised him riches and jewels, but the shepherd did not give in. The King of Prussia returned to his inn, hanging his head in sorrow. His daughter saw this and said, "Do not be sad, father. I will go myself, and I will take a coffer of gold coins and trick him myself." So the king's daughter took a coffer full of gold and a bottle of sweet wine with which to trick the shepherd. But the shepherd only answered that he had no need of money, and King Matthias would surely hang him if he lost the lamb with the golden fleece. But the girl persisted, and soon they had drunk the wine, though she had had to have the first sip to prove to him that she had not poisoned the wine. The shepherd was soon in such high spirits that he said he would give her the lamb with the golden fleece if she would spend the night with him. But he had no need of riches or gold, for he had riches enough. The girl did not hesitate, and she agreed to lie down with the shepherd. Then she said to him, "Skin the lamb and eat its meat, for I have no need of it. I need only its fleece." Brimming with joy, the girl took the fleece back to her home. Her father was overjoyed that his daughter had managed to trick the shepherd. But morning came, and the shepherd was very sad, for he did not know what to say to his king. And as he walked, he stuck his crook in a hole in the ground, hung his hat on its end, stepped back, and greeted it as if it were the king. The king, or rather the shepherd's hat, asked, "What news do you bring me from the fields?" To this the shepherd replied, "No news at all, except that the lamb with the golden fleece is gone, for it was eaten by a wolf." And the shepherd shook with fear. "You lie, for the wolf would have eaten the rest of the flock as well." The shepherd took his crook under his arm and set off again towards the castle. He ambled and rambled along, and he soon came across another hole in the ground, where he stuck his crook in the hole and hung his hat on the end and greeted the figure of the king. "What news do you bring me from the fields?" "No news at all, except that the lamb with the golden fleece stumbled into the well and drowned." "You lie," said the king, "for the others would have drowned too." So the shepherd carried on until he found a third hole in the ground, where he stuck his crook in the hole and hung his hat on the other end, and for the third time he greeted the figure of the king. "What news do you bring me from the fields?" "No news at all, except that the lamb with the golden fleece has been stolen." "You lie," said the king, "for the others would have been stolen too." So for the third time he took his crook from the ground and continued on his way to the castle of King Matthias. In the castle the king was seated at the table together with the King of Prussia and his daughter. The shepherd humbly approached and greeted the two kings and the girl. But the King of Prussia had already given King Matthias the fleece of the golden lamb, and now all three were waiting to see if the shepherd would lie or tell the truth. For if he lied, King Matthias would lose half his kingdom. King Matthias asked, "What news do you bring me from the fields?" "No news at all, except that I exchanged the lamb with the golden fleece for a beautiful black sheep." King Matthias was overjoyed, but he replied, "Bring this black sheep to me." But the shepherd answered, "She is sitting right there between the two kings." "Well done," said King Matthias, "for you have told no lies, and today I give you half of the lands belonging to the King of Prussia. And I shall give you my daughter's hand in marriage," said the King of Prussia, "for you already know the taste of each other's lips." And this is how King Matthias Shepherd rose to become the King of Prussia. Hungarian Folk Tales. Fisherman John. By the banks of a mighty river stood a fisherman's hut, and in that hut a fisherman lived together with his wife, but alas, they had no children. One moonlit night, the old man went down to the river, and he cast his net. Suddenly he saw something approaching on the waters, and it shined like a star. He watched as it neared him. And what did it turn out to be? A small coffin. And in the coffin lay an infant child, fast asleep. He lifted the coffin from the waters, placed it in his boat, and took it home to his wife. "Look what I caught in the river." And lo, he showed her the beautiful golden-haired child. "We have no children of our own," he said. "We are old. We will raise him, and then we will have someone to care for us." The old woman agreed. Time passed and the child began to go to school. The school teacher had a scrawny little horse. He said to John, for that was the boy's name, "Little John, tell your father he could buy this horse." So John ran home full of excitement and told his father. "Father, my school teacher has a horse for sale. Let's buy it." "We don't need a horse, son. We have neither hay nor oats. How would we feed it?" The boy said, "It could graze in the woods by the banks of the river." So they bought the scrawny horse, and the horse grazed in the woods by the banks of the river. One day, the horse spoke. "Listen, John, at the edge of the village there is a small house. In it, a worn saddle. Ask the owner to sell it. If he won't sell it, steal it." The owner gave John the saddle, for he had no need of it. And little John took it home and put it on the horse's back. Then the horse said, "Go, John, to the edge of the village. There is an old bridle bit. Buy it, and if the owner will not sell it, steal it." But the owner would not sell the bit. So John stole it. Again the horse spoke. "John, go to the village. There is an officer there who has a rusty sword, and if he will not give it to you, steal it." The soldier gave John the sword and told him, "Polish it until it shines. Be a soldier." John returned home and again the horse spoke. "Master Fisherman John, tell your father to buy you new clothes." The old man said, "Son, I cannot buy you new clothes, for I have no money." But John insisted and told his father that he would pay for the clothes. So his father agreed and bought him new clothes. Again the horse spoke. "My dear John, polish the harness, the bit and the sword, then clean the saddle and put it on my back." He continued, "My dear Master John, you have a younger sister whom we shall bring back." John, however, insisted that he had no sister. The horse said, "Yes, you do, at the edge of the neighbouring country. She is locked away and only rarely sees the sunlight. Climb on my back and we shall set off." They went to the edge of the neighbouring country and found the house where the girl was locked away. There the horse spoke. "John, kick the door 3 times. If it doesn't open, strike it with your sword 3 times. If it still doesn't open, look around to see if you can see anything. And if you do see something, jump on my back." "I see an old woman," said John. At that, the horse took off at a gallop, racing along as fast as thought. When they reached the banks of the river, the old woman appeared behind them on a long stick carrying a broom in her hand. And when the horse jumped to the far bank of the river, the old woman struck the surface of the water with such force that the waters parted. She cried out, "Lucky for you that you got away!" Then the old woman went back. The horse said to John, "My dear Master Fisherman John, we will set off again tomorrow, but you must be very careful." The next day they set off again for the house at the edge of the neighbouring country. John kicked the door, then struck it so hard with the sword that it burst open. He grabbed the girl's arm, but he tore her blouse and was unable to pull her out. Again the old woman appeared on the stick with the broom in her hand. John said to his horse, "The old woman is coming!" And the horse raced homeward as fast as the winds of a storm. When he reached the river, he jumped to the far bank. The old woman lashed out at him with the broom and struck the horse's rump, but the horse was still able to leap to the far bank. The old woman cried out, "If you ever return, I will have all of your teeth." The next day the horse said to John, Fisherman John, we won't go today, but tomorrow we shall. Today we must rest." Then he said, "Dear master, there is a tree in your father's garden with 3 apples on it. Pick them, put them in your pocket, and when we arrive at the house at the edge of the neighbouring country, throw one of them at the top of the door, one at the bottom of the door, and one at the middle of the door, but throw them so hard that you break the door down." So John did as he was told, and when they arrived at the house, he threw the apples at the top, the bottom, and the middle of the door, and the door broke down. The girl, Helen, stood in the doorway. John led her outside, and when they had left the house, John looked to see if he could see the old woman, and indeed, there she sat on her stick with her broom in her hand. John said to his horse, "Oh, the old woman is coming, on a stick, carrying a broom in her hand." So John and Helen quickly mounted the horse, and the old woman chased them. "Fisherman John, look behind us, because I feel that my rump is on fire." Johnny looked back and saw a cloud of dust far behind them. The horse flew onward, and when they reached the bank of the river, the old woman was still behind them, accompanied by 27 magic stallions. John's horse jumped to the far bank. The old woman and the 27 stallions tried to jump the river too, but they fell into its waters and drowned. And today they still lie somewhere beneath the waters of the river, if no one has fished them out. And so John rescued his sister Helen from captivity, and they both lived happily ever after.